On a March evening in 1979, 23-year-old Arrilla Webb-Vaul disappeared without a trace. Her car was found abandoned with a flat tire, but there are no signs of her. Despite the fact that her tire was slashed, authorities believe that she had walked away voluntarily. But when another woman vanishes in a strikingly similar manner, questions began to arise. Was there a connection, or was this just another case of ignored signs? This is her story.
Hi, I'm Vanessa.
And I'm Amy.
And you're listening to She Goes by Jane. At the end of this episode and every episode, we will be joined by a special guest who will read an original poem by Amy Baker about the women we're featuring. This week, we are joined by Cassandra Naud.
Hi, Vanessa.
Hi, Amy.
Vanessa, have you noticed that I switched from doing a ton of 1930s cases to a lot of 1970s cases?
I guess so. And do you have a reason for that?
I don't. I'm just pondering that in this moment.
Is this another case off of a case?
This is not a case off of a case.
Okay, because you did that for a while with some of the 70s ones.
Yes, so this and a few more episodes that we're going to be recording in the coming weeks, all 1970s. So we're in that era. So yeah, I just get
swept up in. Yes.
So this time I'm swept up in the 1970s. I don't have much to say. I really just want to get into her case, though.
Sounds good.
Okay. It's 10:15 p.m. on March 15th, 1979, when Scott Vaul spots his wife's Toyota Corolla pulled to the side of the road at the foot of the Jimmy Davis Bridge in Bossier Parish, Louisiana. He breathed a sigh of relief. Arrilla was supposed to pick him up after his work shift at a nearby shopping center, but she'd never arrived. It was clear as he approached that something was wrong with her car, so he likely hoped that they could just get it fixed or towed quickly and head home. When he approached the car, he saw he was right. The car was disabled. The tire was flat. Surely not that hard of a fix. They could just put on a spare and get home relatively quickly. But there was one problem. Even though all of her personal belongings were in the car, Arrilla was nowhere to be found. So today we're talking about the disappearance of 23-year-old Arrilla Webb-Vaul, as well as a series of other women missing from Bossier County in the late 1970s. It's about how differently their cases were handled and about how little justice any of them found.
So the other missing women, do they have anything connecting them to Arrilla? Like, is it like a serial killer situation?
So we're going to kind of talk about some of those connective threads and kind of where there were some failures that are really preventing any connections from truly being made in any of the cases that we're discussing.
But you think there's connections?
It's possible there are connections.
Okay. That was vague, Amy.
It is vague. We're going to get into it.
Okay.
Now, Arrilla Naomi Webb was born to John and June Webb on September 27, 1955, in Harris County, Texas. She lived and grew up in Friendswood, Texas, which is now considered part of the greater Houston metropolitan area. And even when Arrilla was young, it was considered kind of a bedroom community to the city. Now, like many of the missing women we talk about, there's actually not much we know about Arrilla. We know that she was an only child, and then at some point her mother disappeared for a few years before returning, which I couldn't find much information about this. So heads up to anyone who wants to sleuth this out and share this with us.
During her childhood?
Yeah.
She just disappeared and then came back?
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
Like in a voluntary missing person kind of way.
Right.
Okay, so this all does, though, point to some kind of traumatic and hard childhood moments, right? But again, there are just so few details about Arrilla. Arrilla graduated from Friendswood High School in 1974. She does have the cutest high school yearbook photos.
Does she?
Yeah. And at some point, she met Scott Vaul. Like Arrilla, Scott was born in Texas, but upon graduating high school, he joined the Air Force. Now, the young couple married on August 28, 1976, and they were stationed at Barksdale Air Force Base in Bossier Parish in Louisiana, which was well away from their families and their hometowns. By 1979, Arrilla was listed as a housewife, and Scott was working 2 jobs. Honestly, he sounds like he has a lot of hustle, and military salaries are notoriously awful, so it makes sense that he was trying to earn as much money as he could.
Mm-hmm.
His second job was actually working at a Kmart at the Eastgate shopping center. But not everything was going smoothly for Arrilla and Scott. The two lived off base, which was about 6 miles from the base itself in an apartment, and Scott had recently received word that a mass had been discovered on his optic nerve.
That doesn't sound good.
No. That's like really frightening news.
That
right?
is really scary.
Yeah. Now, Arrilla was understandably anxious about this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is it? What's going on, right? Now, on March 15th, Arrilla drove Scott to his shift at Kmart at Eastgate. Back then, Eastgate was still relatively new, having been built just a few years before in the fall of 1975. Located on East 70th Street, it was located between East Kings Highway and a bunch of cotton fields which lined Erie Drive. But it was a relatively popular shopping center. Kmart was one of its anchors, but there was also a Kroger's grocery store, Eckert's Drugs, the Crystal Palace Amusement Center, a movie theater, and a lot more. Now, when Arrilla pulled away from the shopping center in her little cream Toyota Corolla around 6 p.m., she was likely thinking about how Friday, the next day, they'd be getting more information about Scott's medical issue. But Arrilla would never learn the outcome. That was one of the last times anyone saw Arrilla Webb-Vaul alive. Now, despite how shocking Arrilla's disappearance was, there was relatively little coverage of her disappearance at the time. Largely, it seemed that the Bossier Parish authorities thought she had left the area voluntarily. And this is despite the fact that they had witness testimony of people who saw her on the side of the road that night. Some even saw a man in a white pickup truck that had pulled up behind her. Authorities just kept on saying there were no signs of foul play in her disappearance.
So because they saw her that night and because they saw a man pull up, they know there was no foul play?
Well, so there's sort of like what is happening here is things don't align for me, right?
Right. How are those two things related?
Yeah, so you've got the police are like, no, there's no signs of foul play. And then there's like actual witnesses who are like, no, we saw a man with her. We saw her car pulled over. Like something might have been up. And they were like, no, she voluntarily disappeared.
But
it makes no sense.
It makes no sense. Also, there's no evidence of that.
Right. But they are also saying there's no evidence of foul play.
But how many stories have we covered where a man pulling up behind you is foul play?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
No.
Okay. But then another woman goes missing in a shockingly similar way.
How did she go missing?
Well, okay. This is Northwood High School senior LaDoisha Gay. She went by the name Dodie.
Oh, that's very cute.
It is. She didn't necessarily have a ton in common with Arrilla, except for the fact that Dodie had planned to marry young as well. Dodie was engaged to an oil rig worker named Jimbo Johnson. Now, Dodie was relatively new to the area. She'd spent her childhood in Missouri, but had gone to Fair Park High School in Shreveport, Louisiana, until she transferred to Northwood. So it's important to know that Shreveport is on one side of the river, and Bossier City is on the other side of the river. But effectively, same area. But she just switched schools, right? So she switched at the end of her junior year. Now, despite this change, she actually became actively involved in extracurriculars and was pretty popular. Her friends and teachers said she was cheerful and that her popularity came from how sensitive she was to others. Her friend Gay Dickinson said, Dodie started making friends at Northwood automatically because of the kind of person she was. When other people had something tragic happen to them, Dodie was the first person to get involved emotionally. One of her teachers, Pat Weaver, said she was always very eager to do her part in anything. She never wanted to hurt anyone. She was really sensitive to everyone's feelings. But despite this popularity, Dodie chose to forego her prom on Friday, April 20th. Her teacher, Pat, said he had spoke to her that morning and said her mood was happy and she seemed to be in a state of happy anticipation. That anticipation and happiness likely stemmed from the fact that instead of going to prom, Dodie intended to pick up her engagement ring at Wilson's, which was a catalog showroom at the Eastgate shopping center. With her new friends occupied by prom, Dodie went on this excursion alone. She went to pick up her paycheck from the shoe store she worked at, visited an ATM, and then drove over to Eastgate. Around 6:30 p.m., after getting the ring, she called her mother and said of her new ring, "Oh, Mama, it's gorgeous." She then told her mother her plan was to do a bit more shopping and then drive to her friend's house to show off the engagement ring. But Dodie never did go see that friend, nor did she make it back home. Her parents went to bed that night thinking that she was still out with her friend, but when they woke up the next morning, they immediately knew something was wrong. Her father, Joe, called the police and then went looking for her. There, in front of the Kmart at the East Gate, Joe found her Oldsmobile Cutlass with a flat tire.
Okay. Similarity there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And knowing something must be terribly wrong, Joe called the police. Joe would later say, "I called the police again. I waited 30 minutes and called again. Won't you please send someone? We lost the biggest part of the day waiting for them to show up." Now, despite his concerns, despite the way her car was found, despite the fact that Arrilla was missing after being at the same location, despite the fact that one officer said it looked like Dodie's car tire had been slashed, there was little interest in pursuing her case initially. Her father, Joe, said, "For the first 72 hours, the police didn't do anything. I pleaded with them. I told them the circumstances, that this just wasn't her nature. She had no reason to leave home."
Yeah, it's surprising that they're not doing anything. It's exactly the same.
Right.
Were her things still in the car and everything too?
Mm-hmm.
So it was very much the same.
Yeah, so most of her things were in the car, right? Now, finally, enough witnesses came forward that the police just, had to investigate. This is possibly something other than a voluntary missing person. Now, according to witnesses who had actually spoken to Joe outside the Kmart when her car was found, now, this witness saw a teenager who matched Dodie's description in the parking lot at around 9:15 p.m. the night before. He said that he had drove by and he saw that her tire had flattened. At this point, it was raining steadily and she pulled over to the curb in front of Kmart. He said he saw a white man in a white, possibly white and gold pickup truck drive up behind her. And this witness said that they believed that this person was there to assist Dodie, so they drove on thinking she was taken care of and that she was okay. Now, despite the similarities between Dodie's case and Arrilla's, the police pushed back against linking them. They said that there was nothing about the cases that would make them believe that they were related.
Not the white truck or the slashed tire?
No.
None of it. Not the same area?
No. Mm-mm.
None of it?
None of it.
Now, if they would have listened and put out something about somebody in a white truck being involved with the disappearance, that guy might have had that knowledge and might have stopped to help Dodie.
Right, because he would have said, "Oh, wait.
I just heard something about a white truck in this area with a slashed tire."
Yeah.
Sounds preventable.
Doesn't it?
Doesn't it?
Doesn't it?
Okay.
Now, they maintained that even though a bag and a receipt that were found in Dodie's car, which indicated that she had been in the Kmart that Friday night, these two cases, nothing related, even though that was another similarity.
Right down to the
Arrilla.
store. Yeah. The store, the color of the truck.
Yeah. The tires.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, one of the reasons that there's resistance to connect these cases is because those in the case began to see them two very different ways. Dodie starts to be cast as this young and friendly teenager who's in love with her whole life ahead of her. In May of that year, as her graduation date came and her classmates crossed the stage without her, the newspapers wrote about, what she was missing by not being there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as an adult who was married, Arrilla's case was hardly featured. Publicly, authorities were saying there were no signs that something had happened to her. And her case got only a slight news boost from Dodie's disappearance, meaning that it made the papers as a related case, but it just hadn't received much attention before then. But there didn't seem to be many developments or interest in pursuing her case at all.
But when you think about it, the girls are really only about 5 years apart, right?
Yes, they're very
close in age. And to somebody who is going around doing these kind of things, they probably looked very similar ages too.
Mm-hmm.
So we've basically got someone going after young-looking women.
Yeah, at the Eastgate Shopping Center.
Yeah. It's just, are people not seeing that they're both young?
Nope.
Okay.
We're gonna dive in a little bit more about how Arrilla gets cast.
Oh, really?
A bit more.
Is there? Okay.
But, meanwhile, what happens, Dodie's disappearance highlights instead a different case entirely, which is a case from December 1978, which is just 5 months before. a mom dropping her kids off at the Eastgate Shopping Center's movie theater had been walking back to her car when she was abducted at gunpoint. She was driven to an open field where she was sexually assaulted, and she managed to get away. And while investigators seemed reluctant to connect anything, women were increasingly reluctant to shop at the Eastgate, despite the fact that they increased security there.
Don't blame them.
Yeah. But then on June 1st, highway workers were checking road signs along a rural DeSoto Parish road where there's like an overpass for Louisiana Highway 510. That's when they came across the remains of a woman. 42 days after she disappeared and 45 miles from where she was last seen, Dodie Gay had been found. Authorities would later say that they thought her body had been thrown from the highway above and that she had a hairline fracture to her skull. This was determined to be the cause of her death. There's very little tissue left on Dodie's body, except she was still wearing the clothes she'd had on the day she disappeared, except for her high-heeled clogs and her purse. Also missing were her earrings, her pinky ring, her onyx and pearl class ring, and her engagement ring. An official identification was made through her dental records.
So she was thrown off alive?
I think that's what they're trying to say there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, after she was found, Dodie's mother said, "It was a pure living hell. It was the longest 6 weeks I've ever lived through. I couldn't sleep. I was just going through the motions. You're just waiting. You go on with life, but you never forget." Meanwhile, Arrilla's family was still waiting. Despite finding Dodie murdered, investigators declined to put more investigators or have more investigative effort on Arrilla's case. Finally, on July 10th, Lamar Breedlove, who was on Arrilla's case, said that they had interviewed 50 people in Arrilla's case and had followed up on a dozen leads. He said each time they drew a blank. Now, this was unacceptable to those who loved her most. Scott knew that Arrilla didn't voluntarily leave. He said, "She's never run off or anything like that. When she got mad for the first 4 weeks, I thought Arrilla Webb-Vaul may have just said to hell with it. I can't take it anymore and bugged out. But since Miss Gay disappeared, I again believe that she wouldn't have done this to me or her parents willingly."
It's so weird they're not out looking for a white truck.
Right. Like, why is that not?
Because, I mean, that was the thing between both, and then now they found Dodie murdered. So wouldn't you immediately be like, oh, yeah, let's look into the white truck?
Yeah. I mean, it might have been part of some of their investigative efforts, but really they're just hammering in this idea that Arrilla must have left voluntarily.
It makes zero sense.
Now, 1 year drags into the next, and her mother decides to take matters into her own hands. Because Arrilla was from Texas, her mom, June, contacted the chief of police in Berkshire, Texas. His name is Bob Coleman. She hoped that he could assist her in this. And Coleman happily stepped in, hoping to find answers about Arrilla's disappearance, despite the fact that this happened in Louisiana. In September 1980, he made some of his findings public. He said that they'd already put in about 400 hours of investigative work and that he was dissatisfied with the Bossier Parish's handling of her case. Coleman said that he couldn't get a hold of Breedlove or others in the department back in Louisiana. Like, they're not returning his phone calls.
Well, I mean, it makes sense then that the mother reached out to him.
Yeah, she's like, I've got to get
not there. Yeah.
somebody
Right.
now. But it just wasn't like that the communication was a mess. It was their investigative practices. Coleman said that from his understanding, Arrilla's tire wasn't just flat, it was slashed. And that despite this, Bossier Parish had released the car into June's possession within 24 hours of it being found. This meant that the vehicle wasn't held and processed by a forensic lab at all. Now, even with these missteps, Coleman actually did believe it was his opinion that Arrilla was still alive.
He's going to say why?
Yeah.
We'll be back in a moment.
Now, during his investigative work, he learned that Arrilla was under what he called duress when she disappeared. In evidence of this, he produced copies of 2 letters she had written home to her parents. You might be wondering what those copies of those letters had, right? Okay. It was more the fact that it was the handwriting. So he submitted...
No.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. He submitted these, and I believe others, to a handwriting specialist who looked at the letters that were sent in 1977 and then letters that were sent out just before she disappeared. And this
isn't the first time we've had
a handwriting expert.
the handwriting expert. I mean, normally I always think of that as somebody to confirm that, yes, the same person wrote these two things. These people are trying to measure emotions based on how you're writing.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, carry on.
I mean, this is actually one of the things that has really fascinated me by some of the 1970s cases that we've looked at. So it just really feels like this was of the time, right?
So maybe you're not like way into the 70s as a decade. Maybe you're just like, wait, this one has another handwriting analysis based on emotions.
Oh my God, yes. And so this expert said that her handwriting showed severe distress syndrome.
How?
Yeah. So Coleman, he develops this thesis, right? Like, if you want to call it that. Was that Arrilla planned to disappear. And some of his evidence for this is obviously the handwriting. And some of it is that there were, unmailed letters from Arrilla to a male friend in Bossier City. And he said that she, quote, retained a close relationship with this man for 3 months.
Are we like thinking she was having an affair?
Well, so like this is how Arrilla, it's not just Coleman, but I wonder also is on Bossier City's side as they start to cast her as like this like unhappy housewife, right?
With distressed, what syndrome? Severe distress syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So she's got the side man and the distress syndrome. So obviously she ran away with the man.
Yeah, and he also said that in a letter she wrote to her mom, which, okay, so now we have we're going to get into a little something more solid.
Okay.
In this letter she wrote to her mom in a few days before she disappeared, she requested that she be taken out of her mother's will. She also added that if anything should happen to her, her mother, not her husband, should get her car. This is likely why the car was handed over to her mother instead of Scott.
Okay, so that is kind of strange. Why did she want to be taken out of her mother's will? Did we ever find out?
No, so it's just in this letter.
And that's a real thing, though? The letter is
Yeah, according to Coleman, this letter is real.
Okay. Huh, so that is odd.
Yeah. Like, that's an actual thing that feels a little more solid.
Right.
Now, Coleman then goes on to say that given her family's history, specifically that her mother had once disappeared for 7 years, he believed that Arrilla was planning on doing the same thing.
Okay, I don't think that's a thing.
That he's like, essentially he's saying, like, yeah, she's just copying her mom.
Yeah.
Now, okay, so this starts to feel a little bit more solid.
Yeah, and the car thing is weird too.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, to back up some of his claims that Arrilla was still alive, Coleman actually had some proof. There were 2 receipts, one to a Montgomery ward and one to JCPenney's, both in Shreveport, that showed payments were made to her accounts there in June and August of 1979, and again in May, June, and July 1980. He said that there were also 2 payments to her accounts to a JCPenney's in Houston, Texas. He said one took place in June 1979 and one in May 1980.
And we don't think that somebody else is using her
cards?
Well,
yeah, so these are like not, these are payments.
They're payments to on her card.
Yeah. So like credit has been used and these are paying off.
Okay, that's weird too.
Right? And you're like, oh, okay, Coleman might have something here, right?
Yeah.
Coleman said that like in reality, what to him this case hinged on was Arrilla's husband coming forward to speak with him. Because I guess Scott had not before then.
Okay.
Now, not long after this, though, Scott actually goes to the papers himself. In some ways, he agreed with Coleman. The investigation from the Bossier Parish side was a mess. He said that it had been months since Lamar Breedlove had spoken to him and updated him about Arrilla's disappearance. Scott also agreed that Arrilla was upset before she disappeared. But far from marriage strife, he said that he thought she was upset because they were waiting to see if the mass on his optic nerve was cancer or not.
Mm-hmm.
But he did not come to the same conclusions as Coleman. He said that he too had talked to the man in Bossier City and that he learned that the two of them did have a close relationship, but it was strictly a business one. He also said that he was the one who had made the payments on the store
Okay.
accounts in Shreveport. He said that he didn't know why it showed some payments were being made in Houston, but thought it could just have been that the payments were transferred to her account there for past purchases made in Houston.
So there goes all the proof.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why you were smirking while I was like trying to figure that out.
Right, like we're onto something.
We're onto something. No.
Yeah.
You're like, no.
No. Now, to Scott, his suspicions rested with foul play. Someone had done something to his wife, and he announced his plan was to leave the Air Force, and he hoped that this would give him the ability to look for her himself. Now, Scott's quest for answers would find few, and in Bossier City, Doty's parents weren't any closer to learning what happened to her. In fact, there were a lot of crimes against women in the local community and scant answers. In 1976, Shirley Coleman, a 33-year-old mother of 3, was in Shreveport, which again is just over the river from Bossier City. 3 years before Doty and Arrilla went missing, Shirley had been abducted from a different shopping center on Christmas Eve. She'd been out getting some last-minute gifts for the kids, and her car was found abandoned at the shopping center. When Arrilla and Doty went missing, she was one of the area's missing women. It would take until 1981 for Shirley's body to be found. A hunter found her remains in a wooded area off Woolworth Road. She had been shot in the head.
So this stuff had been going on for some time.
Yeah. Now, despite this being another of the area's unsolved crimes, Lamar Breedlove didn't have many answers or ability to link any of these crimes together. A few years after Arrilla's disappearance, Breedlove said, "We've worked 2 or 3 cases similar to this since her disappearance. There's only so much you can do." And they seemed just as far from naming a suspect in Doty's disappearance and murder. But in Shirley's case, unlike Doty's, there would actually be some form of justice. In 1993, an 11-year-old girl named eerily Underwood was out delivering papers in Pocatello, Idaho. And I can't even talk about what happened to eerily, to be honest. But she was kidnapped on June 29th and murdered the following day. Her remains, or some of her remains, were found 8 days later. Shortly after that, a man named Jay was arrested, and he readily confessed to her murder. Shortly after this confession, Jay made another one. He said they had kidnapped Shirley from the shopping area back in Louisiana and driven her to the General Electric industrial plant. There he had raped her and killed her. Now, during his time in prison, Jay did confess to other rapes, murders, assaults, and robberies that spanned at least 7 states. For many investigators, they were worried about believing his claims given that there was an alleged serial killer who had just recently bamboozled everyone with his lies. And we talked about him a bit in our episode on Bexar County Jane Doe. But soon authorities began to realize that some of these confessions actually did hold weight. Other girls and women had made accusations about sexual assault, including his wife's teenage niece, who said he had raped her in 1992 in Shreveport, Louisiana. When investigators had tried to question him back then, they learned that he had already left town. But Jay never confessed to the disappearances of Arrilla and Doty or Doty's murder. There were only suspicions he was involved due to the case similarities, but he was never charged with anything, and to be clear, there wasn't any physical evidence linking them. We do know, though, he lived in Bossier City starting in 1967. During his time, he was in and out of prison, but he was in that area through most of the 1970s through 1980s. Jay sat on Idaho's death row and the Idaho Maximum Security Institution until 2004, when he actually died of natural causes.
Are you thinking that he is the one
So,
in Arrilla and Doty's cases?
Good question.
Yeah.
There's some possibility, I think, that he might be, given how brutal his attack was against the 11-year-old.
Yeah.
More recent investigators have mentioned that there might be somebody else who had died in the 1980s who was a suspect, who had, like, newspaper clippings about Doty in his truck.
So there just happened to be 2 men doing kind of similar things in the same spot at the same time.
Yeah.
It's possible. We've talked about that before.
Yeah, it is possible. And some of the conversations that we've had recently, particularly in these cases from the 1970s, is like what is startling is when you start being like, oh, it might be that guy who killed a bunch of people, or it could have been that guy who killed maybe a bunch of people. Or
Largely, I don't know. And this, in this time, I'm getting the feeling that not just the people doing these crimes, but the other people, the people investigating, and the other people just are almost thinking of women as disposable.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it's like the feeling I got with one that we recently talked about with hitchhikers, and there's been other ones too. And it just seems like women weren't actually considered people
Yeah.
at this point.
Yeah. I mean, the way that they're, particularly Arilla's case is just kind of shrugged off.
Mm-hmm. Well, and trying to find ways to blame her.
Yeah.
Like all the ways that she might have.
So it's like casting her as this voluntarily missing adult because she seemed unhappy or what? Like,
That's not fair to her or her parents, but it's actually really not fair to her husband.
exactly. And the fact that you have this woman, so okay, maybe she was unhappy and she decided to disappear.
Mm-hmm.
But why would her car be disabled on this? Why would that be the
Right.
moment she's like, I'm going to disappear. I'm going to slash my car tire and leave it on the side of the road and just disappear with none of my belongings,
Mm-hmm.
right? Doesn't even make logical sense.
Mm-mm. No, and her husband was already going through enough. I don't think she would have purposefully added to that.
Right. And they were supposed to be getting important news the next day.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The fact that she was cast as a voluntarily missing adult despite these very alarming red flags in her case is just ridiculous to me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the search for Arrilla has never actually ended. June, Arilla's mother, hired multiple psychics over the years to help find her daughter, which is something we see.
Very trendy in the 70s also, right?
Yeah. Now, in 1983, one said that there were several locations around the Shreveport area that should be investigated. The Bossier Parish Sheriff's Department actually did look into a field near Fant Parkway. It was one they had actually searched 3 years before in their hunt for Arrilla, so they had actually looked for her, but,
Kind of.
kind of. Now, this was hard terrain to search, and one sheriff's deputy said, "It's impossible. You could step on human bones and never know it. The grass is so high out here."
That's a disturbing thought, isn't it?
Yeah.
That he's just yeah, we can look, but...
It would be impossible to
Yeah.
actually find someone out here. Now, the new sheriff at the time, Vol Dooley, didn't trust the psychic's abilities, believing the results were just not there.
Mm-hmm.
He said, "Their results have been poor. In my experience, we've only done this a few times. Our workload is so tremendous, I'm probably going to have to shut it down soon. But what do you do?" The lady, meaning June, is naturally upset about her daughter. "We want to do what we can." It's now been 46 years since Arrilla disappeared, and other investigators are on the case. Now, Lieutenant Robert Davidson, who had worked for the DA's office and the DeSoto Parish Sheriff's Office for over 40 years, in 2018, he was actually still working primarily on cold cases, and this was one of them. He said that he hoped with time someone would come forward, that maybe someone would feel moved to confess. Davidson said, "Somebody who is even bad, a bad person, after years of going on, lots of time their philosophy changes. They change, and sometimes they want to tell you something."
How do you feel about that?
I mean, we have talked a little bit about deathbed confessions. I think they're relatively rare. I think it's more likely that someone who saw something who's been keeping it inside, or someone who a killer told details of, they are more likely to come forward.
An actual, a witness or somebody who's kind of more innocent to what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that.
Yeah. Or someone who's been protecting someone. We've seen some cases with that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's so hard.
It is. And then when people do come up with things after, then sometimes they're doubted too.
Right.
So yeah.
Now, time, though, it's continuing to march on without any answers. Both of Arilla's parents have since passed away, not any closer to the truth. And in 2009, Scott passed away at the age of 52. His obituary read in part, "Waiting to greet him on the other side was his mother and father and his first wife, Arrilla. Now he has the answers to all his unanswered questions, and he provides us with an angel on our shoulder, watching over us from heaven."
We are now going to listen to Amy's poem, Resistance, read by Cassandra Naud. Cassandra is a queer Canadian actor, dancer, and filmmaker, originally from Fort McMurray, Alberta. At 19, she moved to Los Angeles to pursue her passion for performance, earning a Bachelor of Fine Arts before booking notable dance credits and eventually transitioning into acting. Cassandra is best known for her breakout role as CW in Influencer. She made her television debut as Fiona in Snowpiercer and has since appeared in recurring roles in C and Louder Milk. She will next be seen leading in her upcoming sequel, Influencers, set to premiere this summer at Fantasia Film Festival. In 2023, Cassandra made her directorial debut and has since had 2 short films featured on the festival circuit, one of which screened at Vancouver's Innovative Film Festival. A passionate advocate for inclusion, Cassandra brings lived experiences to her work across disciplines. She continues to challenge traditional beauty standards and is proud to be part of a generation reshaping the narrative around identity and representation in the media.
Resistance. Arrilla Webb-Vaul, 23, missing since March 15, 1979, from Bossier Parish, Louisiana. On the treadmill at my local gym, I listen to an audiobook that tries to teach me to forget the stories I've been told about what it takes to survive in this world. All those times I've slid one headphone off my ear so I can listen for footsteps rushing behind me, and those nights I've stayed home are just a house of cards that won't stand when you pull one from the base. I tried to be as brave as the woman reading the book believes me to be, but when a man takes the treadmill next to me, I calculate how long it will be before I can be the one to leave. She says, safety comes through resistance, and I find myself nodding along, visualizing what it would take to free myself from an attacker, remembering what it was like to take a punch. These are the stories we tell about ourselves, but at home I read the warnings. Check the back seats of your cars, check the pressure in your tires, watch for men who seem to offer kindness. And I know the story of a car driving up to a shopping center, a woman letting her husband out just beyond the front doors. As she pulls away, the setting sun turns the car's hood opaline, everything awash in light. In the stories I tell, I want to believe I can offer beauty, because there are moments left to gather before her car is found abandoned. But I want to tell stories where we are out jogging, the crystalline wind our companion as we run faster and faster without anyone behind us.
For more information about our show or to check out other shows on the network, please visit evergreenpodcast.com. Bye, Vanessa.
Bye, Amy.